Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to GDG Pretoria and our Android 11 event. Today, we're very delighted to welcome you all to our or yet another Android event, as we've had one before. So, as you will know, Android has over 1.6 billion users worldwide, and that translates to a market share of about 74%. And that is a difference of a whacking 50% with the competitors. So we are happy that as Android users and developers, there's always progress and developments going on around the Android space. In South Africa alone, the market share sits on a whacking 84%. And this means that all other OSs in the mobile space share the 16%, which is remaining. For this reason, Google and Android developers don't rest. We keep marching on and trying to find the best way to make sure that our users have the best experience. And we are going to be hosting speakers tonight. We have 3 speakers. I'm afraid one speaker has dropped due to an illness, but we do have all 3 speakers today who are going to be giving us a tour of the Android 11 journey. So before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors, DVT and Google, and our organizers who are here. And we just want to remind you that you are always welcome to ask questions. Our speakers are not rigid, so feel free to ask any questions you might have. We will be able to flag some of the questions as we go, but if not, we'll be having a Q&A session afterwards, so you can ask all the questions you like. And just another announcement, we will be giving away a cool tech prize to a lucky winner for those of you who are going to give us feedback. We do this so that we know what we can do to improve on our events and what we can concentrate on, and so that we as a community can grow and learn and share productively. So our first speaker is Martin Trollip. Martin is an Android developer with Discovery, and Martin actually works in the Android team, and he's been working in this team for a while, so he's got all the experience to give us a talk on what's new in Android 11. Hopefully, this is exactly what's happening with Discovery. And as a Discovery application user, I totally enjoy using the application. So we are going to be having a talk from Martin. And the title of his talk, once again, is What's New in Android. Martin?
Thanks, Nomsa, and good evening to everybody. I hope you're doing well, and thank you for attending tonight. Like Nomsa said, I'll be talking a little bit about what's new in Android 11. Okay. So tonight I'm just going to touch briefly on what's new in Android 11 regarding the user interface and the privacy changes. I'm also going to talk a little bit about what's new in the developer tools and Android Studio. I'll talk about new Jetpack libraries, and we'll wrap things up with just talking about what's new in the Google Play console. Let's jump into the UI first, since this is probably the features that the users will care about most. Insets is a feature that has been around on Android for quite some time, but up until this point, it hasn't been really useful. Insets are items on the screen that's not your application. This will be items such as the status bar and the navigation bar at the bottom of the screen. In Android 11, we have a new redesigned window insets API, which provides more information regarding the position and the animation of insets. What this will allow is for IME animations. IME is an input method editor, and you can think about that as a keyboard for the example. What we can do now with the new window insets API is we can get information of the keyboard, such as the location and animation, and we can build better experiences by syncing the content of the app with the animation of the keyboard opening. We can also listen for changes on the keyboard, and we can also drive the animation from the app side. Let's check how that works. Here on the left-hand side, you can see that an example of how the content of the app is dynamically changed based on the state changes of the keyboard. And on the right-hand side, you can see how the app drives the keyboard popping up dynamically. So now you won't have any jumping and jarring animations when opening the keyboard. Android 11 is centered around people, and conversations are important to people, and Android has realized that notifications from people you know are more important than other redundant notifications. So now Android provides a dedicated and persistent area for notifications. Users can set priority of these notifications to always appear on top, and these new features are built on top of the existing notification APIs. Let's check how that looks. So you can see that on the top of your notification panel, you have the conversations appearing here. This space will always be available, and it will always be at the top. Users can choose for each notification how they want to be notified about it. You can switch certain notifications to silent. And you can also prioritize notifications. Those will always appear on top. Next, we have bubbles. This is to further enhance the experience when interacting with other people. Bubbles used to be a developer option in Android 10, and it's now here to use in Android 11. This is a notification that can be displayed on top of everything else on the UI to make multitasking a lot easier. And this is a good replacement to use instead of system alerts. This also makes use of the notification API, and you just need to provide a bit of metadata, and you need to provide a dedicated and resizable activity for this. This is bubbles in action. As you can see, you can create a bubble, and you can access it from anywhere and reply on the same screen without losing any time at all. Next, we have control, which is one of my favorite features of the Android 11 release. This gives a dedicated and persistent area for home automation and Internet of Things controls. The powered menu was repurposed to include controls for IoT devices, and you can use it with a quick and efficient long press. The user also gets to choose which controls they want to see on the screen. Android introduced a new Android Services Control package, which is one of their first APIs to be built using Java 9 reactive streams. And this is how it looks. As you can see, we still have the existing powered controls here at the top. And here at the bottom, you have controls such as switching on lights and other devices and your thermostat. Next, there's also some new enhancements to the media player. In Android Lollipop, the media style notification was introduced for media players. This is the notification with embedded pause buttons and next buttons and so on. In Android 11, there's a dedicated persistent space for this. Notice a recurring theme with the dedicated and persistent spaces. This is to make the user's journey more familiar, and they will always know where to find the things that they use the most. For the media player, this space is on the lock screen and also in your quick settings. Android 11 also introduces a better media browser service. And if you implement this, the browser service will keep hold of your notification and you can resume playback at any time, even if your service was killed. This is even possible to resume media playbacks after the device reboot. So this is how the quick settings will look for media controls. Notice that there's also a new output chooser over here. So you can choose between a Bluetooth headset and your device audio. And you can also control the volume directly from here. Next, we have toasts. So toasts might be a bit less exciting, but the changes are still important. For security reasons and to maintain a good user experience, toasts that make use of a custom view and sent from the background are blocked. To give developers more time to adapt to these changes, they will only take effect if your app targets Android 11. And don't worry, text toasts will still be allowed. There's also an addition of callbacks for when toasts is shown or hidden. Next, I'll talk about privacy, but I won't spend too much time on it because I know Potsane will talk about it right after this. The world is shifting into an age of information where users' data and privacy is more important than ever. Google has invested heavily into protecting the user's data and to make it easier for users to understand how and when their data is being used and accessed. The focus is to be as transparent as possible. One of the features that will allow this is one-time permissions. Notice here our user can choose to grant permission only for one time when using location, and also only when the app is in the foreground. I'm sure Potsane will have more details around the restrictions and benefits of using this. And Google assures that if you already implemented permission requests according to the best practices and guidelines, that this will just work out of the box. There's lots more to privacy, including data access auditing, package visibility restrictions, scoped storage, and auto reset of permissions. Now I'm going to talk about dev tools real quickly. Android Studio and several other tools makes it really easy to develop good quality apps in a minimal amount of time. Project Marble was introduced in Android Studio 3.5, and the goal of this project was to make the overall performance and stability of Android Studio better, rather than adding new features. But now we have Android Studio 4.0, and we have new features. Starting off with a new icon. This is a visual cue to show that Android Studio is more than an IDE. It's a suite of tools and APIs to make modern app development as efficient and quick as possible. One of the first features if you use Android Studio 4.0 and the Gradle plugin 4.0.0 is build feature toggles. Now you can use this block in your Gradle file to dynamically turn features on and off to optimize your build performance and build times. So say, for example, if you don't want view binding or data binding, you can just switch it off over here. This can also be applied per module level. Next, we have a new motion editor. So a motion editor is used to create a motion layout really quickly. Motion layouts is the new design for motion layout. Apologies. Just before I go into the motion editor, I just want to explain what the motion layout does. And basically, a motion layout is a type of layout that helps you to easily and quickly animate screens. It's based on the constraint layout and the idea that you have a starting state and the ending state of your constraint, called constraint sets. And then Android will determine how to animate between the start and end state. Motion Editor makes it really easy for you to do this graphically. You simply start off by creating a constraint layout, and then you right-click and say create motion layout, which will automatically create the start and end states, which you can edit. There's also a preview where you can see how it will behave on an actual device. Another new feature in 4.0 is the layout inspector. This is a live inspector of your activities layout, and you can have a 3D view to see how your views are stacked on top of each other, and it's going to help you to analyze build weirdness or layout weirdness, and you can use it to compare to the mockups you have. There's also a view hierarchy that you can see over here, and you can also inspect and even set the attributes of elements in real time. Along with this, there's also a new layout validation panel where you can compare multiple configurations simultaneously, such as different font sizes, screen sizes, and themes. In Android Studio 4.0, there's also a new build analyzer. Google knows that there's many various factors that can affect the performance of your builds. And they've made it easier for you to optimize and save time. After each build, the build analyzer will present important information to you. This is done by a link printed in the build log. And this will allow you to quickly see which plugins are slow, where there's bottlenecks, and what other performance issues you might have. With Android Studio 4.1, you can inspect your app's Loom and SQLite databases. You can debug your running app by modifying values in your database, and you can test the results in real time. And also in Android Studio 4.2, just to make developers' life a little bit easier, there's also Wi-Fi debugging. To set this up is a bit of a manual process, but it works pretty well. Next, I'll talk about the behavioral changes. Google wants to make it easier to migrate to Android 11. So they've made a conscious effort to minimize the platform changes that could affect your apps. This means that most of the changes are opt-in where it's possible until you set your target SDK to Android 11. You can also toggle breaking changes using the developer settings or your command line. So say, for example, you wish to disable default scoped storage, you can just run a command line and disable it. You can also do this in the developer settings panel, which was added to Android 11. There's also much more new tooling. First off, we have native image decoders, so there's no more JNI upcalling. We have Oboe, a C++ library for high-performance audio. There's also support for variable refresh rates because new devices comes with 90 and 120 Hz displays. There's a new thermal API, so you can monitor and respond to thermal events of the device. And there's lots of APIs to make 5G integration easier. Let's chat about Jetpack quickly. Jetpack is a collection of more than 70 libraries, which is used to create good quality apps with best practices in mind. And you can do it really fast. Jetpack is actively maintained and there's releases every 2 weeks. So let's have a quick look. First, we have Hilt. It's a dependency injection library for Android that reduces the bullet code of doing manual dependency injection in your projects. Hilt is built on top of Dagger, and it's now Jetpack's recommended dependency injection library. It integrates really well with other Jetpack libraries. It's built for testing, so it's easy to test. and it integrates seamlessly into Android Studio. This is currently in alpha, so go check it out. Next, we have Paging 3.0. It's a Kotlin first Jetpack library for pagination. It helps you to load pages and data and to use bandwidth and resources more efficiently. It now supports headers and footers and separators. It also includes states for loading, for retry, and for refresh. This is also in alpha. Next, I'll talk about Camera X a little bit. So this aims to make camera app development really easy and reliable. It's similar to Camera 2 and built on top of that, but it's even easier. So managing consistent camera behavior across apps can be difficult. You have to think a lot about the aspect ratios, the orientations, rotation, preview size, and so on. With Camera X, all of these basic functionalities just works out of the box. And you can now build new and better user experiences by using Camera X extensions, which allows you to use the same kind of features as the native camera on your phone. This is also tested on hundreds of real devices in the Google Test Lab. And there's much more to Jetpack, such as the App Startup Library, which provides a straightforward and performant way to initialize components on app initialization. There's the Android Game SDK, which provides a frame pacing library to keep consistent frame rates in games. And there's also a performance tuner, which monitors and reports the performance of your games. And we have more. We have Benchmark 1.1, which measures the app's CPU performance by using the existing CPU profiler. We have more lint checks in AppCompat. So a lot of times when using AppCompat, you're not sure if you should be using the framework attribute or the AppCompat attribute. So now lint checks will warn you about items such as using Android drawable start instead of app drawable start. Imagine all the KitKat crashes this could have saved us. And there's also a new start for result API. I'll quickly chat about Jetpack Compose, which is the next gen UI toolkit. It simplifies and accelerates UI development with less code and intuitive designs. You basically just describe your UI and Compose takes care of the rest. There's no callbacks, setups, or cleanups required. It's written entirely in Kotlin, and it's currently in developer preview too. It's still under active development, so the Jetpack people appreciate your feedback. New features in Jetpack Compose Dev Preview 2 is lists and modifiers, so you can now build recycled views. It supports constraint layouts using constraint sets. Animations works out of the box. You can implement Compose bit by bit in a similar fashion to how you can implement Kotlin bit by bit in your app. And there's new features for testing. And this is an example of how that would look. As you can see here on the right-hand side, the emulator is now embedded directly in Android Studio. You have your Jetpack Compose code here in the middle and the interactive preview on the right-hand side. So as you tweak the code over here, you can see in real time how it's updating on your preview. And this preview is also interactive, so you can use it to test the logic of your widget as well. And then to wrap up, I'll just quickly go over what's new in Google Play. So there's a new Google Play console which has been completely redesigned from the ground up. It's built to be cleaner and easier to use. You now have refined acquisition reports, and better release overviews. You can also manage team members better with granular permissions. This is now in beta, and you can access it by going to play.google.com/console. App bundles is also currently gaining a lot of momentum in Google, and the new console allows you to download and view all the app bundle variations of your builds. App bundles will become a requirement somewhere in 2021, so start using them if you're not using them already. The new Google Play console also has a lot of features for games, such as the performance tuner to track your app performance, as I mentioned earlier. And there's also a new feature called Day One Auto Install. So you can start to build interest and accelerate game downloads before it's released to the Play Store. And finally, Google launched Play Points. It lets users earn rewards by buying and downloading apps from the Google Play Store. And then you can use these points and rewards to redeem it for credit or in-app purchases. The system also includes 4 reward levels with different perks. This is taking gamification to a new level. And on that note, I'll hand back to Nomsa. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Martin. That was a brilliant presentation, and I'm sure Android 9 is most probably going to see its last few days as the favorite in the market. Yeah. I do see that there is a question for you, Martin. The question is from Ravi. He says, Toast class set view is deprecated. Some details about it, please. Or would you like to take it now? Or
I can answer that one quickly. So basically what's happening is, it's like I said, set view won't work when it's called from a background task. So if you build a toast with a custom view, you shouldn't be using that from any background threads anymore. This is just to build a more consistent user experience across devices and apps. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, I'm sure I'm sure Ravi will ask again if this is not completely answered. But thank you very much. We know that during your spare time you like tinkering around with Android and automating stuff. That's something we are really looking forward to you sharing some of the details of stuff that you do that's interesting. So thank you once again for your talk. We'll see you again in future.
Thanks, Nomsa.
Okay, so up next we have Potsane. And Potsane is his talk is on building privacy-centric apps on Android 11. Potsane is a software engineer at Luno. He loves Kotlin. And he has some interest in UX and UI. And as you know, Luno is a Bitcoin exchange. So anything money oriented, you know that security and stability is at the utmost. It's possibly the most significant. So we will be learning about the best way to embed privacy and security within Android 11. So I'm going to call upon Potsane to give us his talk tonight. Potsane, you can go ahead.
Cool. Thanks, Melissa. As introduced, my name is Potsane. I currently work at Luno as a software engineer. And then, just like Martin, I'm going to be talking to you guys about the new features on Android 11. We focusing specifically on privacy. Yeah, we'll talk to you guys about some cool new privacy changes on Android 11. So when it comes to privacy with this new Android 11 release, the main focus was to make the platform more privacy-centric by letting users to be more in control of their data so that you can always maintain the level of privacy which you want to. And then also making sure that the responsibility of taking privacy-sensitive decisions is shared by the user and the apps, and as well as the Android system. So, in order to bring about this protection of the user's data, these are the features which are introduced as part of Android 11. Permission changes, which we'll talk about, and then permission auto reset. We also touch a little on that one as well. For consent types, data access auditing. We'll also talk a bit about that. Scope storage and package visibility. So yeah, these are the features which we introduced in order to import privacy on Android 11. So let's talk about permission changes. But okay, before we actually go deeper into new permission changes on Android 11, I just want us to go back to Android 6. I think as most of us remember, since Android 6, there was an introduction of the concept of one-time permissions, which simply means that
Hi,
users
Potsane. Sorry, can I just interrupt? Your sound is a bit broken. Maybe if you can take off the earphones, might get a better sound. And your slides, please share your slides as well. Thanks.
I'm sharing the slides though. How is it now?
Just try to reshare. We're not picking up the slides.
Well, quite sorry about that. Apparently, I've not been sharing my slides. I've been doing it myself. So yeah, I think I was about to talk about permission changes on Android 11. So yeah. So I was going to say, for permission changes, we should remember that since Android 6, there was an introduction of runtime permissions, meaning that users could now be allowed to give permissions to the app at a point in time in which the app actually demanded to use the user's private data. And then that was changed a bit on Android 10. There was a slight change made on foreground and background location permission request access. Users are now provided with a third option of granting permission only when the app is in use. And then from this change on Android 10, there's an interesting statistic from Google that every time when the users were presented with an option of granting permission only when the app is in use, about 50% of the time, this was the case, that users prefer to share the private data with the app only when they're currently using it. So with this in mind, there was a change made on Android 11
where now users are given more control over their private data. Like whenever an app needs to access the user's location, microphone, camera, and there's now a small change that there's an option for them to grant a one-time permission. So this simply means that there's a third option when a user tries to access, when the app tries to access the user's location. For example, in this permission, you see there's the third option that allow the permission only this time, or allow while using the app. So only this time is the new addition. The same goes for accessing microphone as well, and for accessing the camera. Yeah. So in order for us to actually use this one-time permissions on our current existing apps, there's no changes required as long as we been following the right permission best practices. So this simply means that we still need to declare your permissions on the app's manifest file. And then also the most important part is that whenever your app tries to access the user's private data, you first need to make sure that the permission has been granted. If it has been granted, you can then go ahead and perform the action that was intended. And then if not, let the system decide whether or not to show a rationale in a form of a contextual UI explanation. Then from that, you can actually request the permission. So requesting the permission actually involves making a call to the activity compact request permission, passing the current context, also passing an array of permissions that you want. But the most important thing to take note of is that even though this is an array that you expect that to pass through, it's best to always request a single permission from the user at a time. We don't need to overwhelm the user with numerous other permissions. So the third argument being passed is the permission request code. Then after doing this, we also need to override this method, which is actually a callback that listens to the user's response on the permission. Right? So yeah, after requesting the permission, this is the permission that is popped up. The user makes a choice, and then back to the callback method. So if the permission has been granted, we can always perform the intended action. But if the permission is not granted, we then show an explanation to the user as to why certain functionality are not available to them. So it's important that you do not block the users on the app, or we should not nudge the users that they should actually go to settings and grant us the permission that they just denied. We don't do that. So yeah, for now, I think that's about it, about one-time permissions. So I'll be talking next about location permissions, some changes in there. So since Android 10, users are given more fine-grained control by splitting permissions between foreground and background location access. To make background location usage more clear, apps are now encouraged to incrementally request these permissions. First, you must make sure that you request the foreground location, and then after that, you can request the all-time location access. And then on Android 11, this is actually being enforced. So, but we need to keep in mind that for foreground location, there's actually no changes at all. For example, whenever you request the course location or file location permissions, this still grants you the foreground location access on all versions of Android. And also, what's important to note is that on Android versions before Android 10, accessing foreground location automatically gives you access to background location as well. So Now that's not the case for Android 11. Whenever you need access to background location, you first must get access to foreground location, and then after that, then you can only demand access to background location. So this is how you probably go about it. On the app, you make a permission to get course location or find location, and then depending on the user's input to that, whether they allow you or not, you could also let the system show a rationale for you getting the background location, and then take the user to the settings, and then where they can count the app all-time usage for location. So in order to ensure that apps targeting Android 10 still working fine with these new changes, there's a slight change on the dialog presented to the user for permissions. There's an option to allow in settings, which actually take the user to settings, and then they can then allow all time. So yeah, that's all for now about location access. I think next I'll talk about permissions auto reset. So this new feature on Android 11, which actually allows the system to reset runtime permissions which had been granted before on apps if the app in question has been unused for months. Well, this is quite important because, like, when I was actually preparing for this talk, I actually went through my phone. I saw that I have like 130 apps installed on my mobile device, and then I think realistically I probably use less than 10 of those apps regularly. So this becomes a problem because actually I'm not the only one. On average, a smartphone has about 75 apps installed, and just a quarter of those apps which are installed actually gets used. So this means that users go ahead, install the app, use it for the first 10-15 minutes, grant whatever permission the apps request, and then they leave the app there, like not used for months. And then this means that in the time, the app actually can access whatever private data that the user had granted at installation. So in order to stop this, I think the guys at Google decided to add this feature that whenever an app goes unused, well, it doesn't say about the length of the period on the guidelines, but it just says for months. Whenever the app has not been used for months, they just like automatically reset all the granted permissions. Well, of course, this only affect apps targeting API level 30, which is under 11, and then yeah, the rest of the apps should be working fine. So in order to request users to disable the auto reset on your app, you need to make sure that you start an intent with this action underscore application underscore detail underscore these settings, and then the user will be taken to permissions, then add permissions, and then they can disable this feature. Well, it's currently enabled for now. So next, I'll talk about the data access audit library. Well, this is another new feature on Android 11. It's an API that makes it easy for app developers to edit, audit, and track their app's current data access and usage of the user's private data. Well, why is all this important, or why is it an issue? Like, why do we need to audit our apps access to the user's data? The thing is, when working on large apps, you find that there's a lot of code which is probably orphaned, and then there's probably lots of teammates going in, going out. So it might actually get heavy, like in terms of to know exactly which part of your code access what private user data. And then as well, another issue is third-party libraries. Almost every app has relies on third-party libraries, and sometimes it might actually not be easy to know which third-party library access which part of user private data. So it's quite important to know actually to get these APIs, which will let you know which part of your app are accessing what part of the user's private data. So yeah. This API, which has been introduced, is the first one is the callback whenever data is accessed, and then the feature tagging option to access logical features within the app. So I'm just going to show a snippet of code to demonstrate how a callback for data access is accessed. While this is done through the App Ops Manager class, we basically create a callback option for the App Ops Manager class. And then within the op-noted callback class, there's a set of methods we need to override, which will let our app know when there's private data access. And then whenever this happens, we can then log whatever information that has been accessed, and then you can also print the stack trace to help us probably identify the source of this access, of this private data access. Because remember, private data within your app could actually be accessed by a third-party library. So the next one is for tagging our features. Simply, just like previously, the only extra step we do here is to create an attribute context and give it a meaningful name. For example, in this case, I named my find location tag, and then we actually pass this context to the API calls. And then when auditing the API callback data, you can actually search for this find location tag, and then you can actually see whenever it's been accessed. And then setting it up, this can be set up maybe in the app's application class, or maybe can set up specifically to the component where we want to track, like maybe an activity or a fragment. So I just show this snippet of my logcat showing me accessing my device's contact list. I actually used a third-party library called multi-contact picker to access my contact list, and then I did log the private data access stack trace here. First, this shows me the permission contact, which is the red contact, and then the admission tag, which I didn't pass, and then just now, and then the stack trace. And then as I go through the stack trace, I can actually see which third-party library actually is the source of this private data access. And then the next snippet I'm going to show, just like the attribution context example, just similar to the previous one, just shows the permission. The permission access is find location in this case, and then I did pass my attribution tag, which is find location tag. And then yeah, you can actually go to locate, search, find location tag, and then it will give you all the logs like relating to this tag. So yeah, I think that's it from my side with Android privacy changes on Android 11. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Potsane. That was a brilliant talk as well. Well, privacy is not something we should ignore, and the fact that some of these features, you don't have to try and reinvent the wheel. They are embedded in the application itself, in the platform itself. Makes us all very happy when we're using our Android applications. Looking out for questions, I don't see any, but I do see that there is a comment from class. It says all Android developers who want to keep up with the developments in Jetpack Compose join the Kotlin Lang Slack to interact with the Android engineering team behind Compose. So it looks like no questions. That means that was Well, I guess some people are reserving their questions for the last part or the Q&A session. So thank you once again. We will see you later.
Cool, thanks.
Okay. Next up, we were going to have a machine learning talk from Anyedi Udo Obong. And I think Anyedi is well known in our community. He also works with the GDGs in Sub-Sahara Africa. Unfortunately, Anyedi couldn't make it tonight. He did send in a message with an apology. So the title of his talk was Machine Learning, and we were going to have his talk oriented towards machine learning in Android. However, we intend to have a machine learning session sometime next month, or maybe in the following months, and we would appreciate if you could give us some feedback if you would like machine learning to be one of our sessions. Machine learning is a topic that is very interesting to a lot of people and is also highly misconceived. Most people think machine learning, we're learning it so that we can implement it. But it has long passed that hypothetical application type of application. It is now something that is used and mostly people are working to improve on it. But at the same time, it's still a very interesting and new topic to a lot of people. So we won't be having this talk. I'm really sorry about this. So that will mean next up, we are going to be having Doug Sellers. And Doug his talk is actually a challenge. The title of his talk is How Fast is Your Android App? So Doug is a renowned web and mobile performance expert and a developer advocate who helps developers and companies identify app performance issues. He also helps train developers to identify future performance bottlenecks before they actually occur. His career spans decades, going back as far as 2G. For some of you here, don't even know that. Like some guys here are pretty much young and they don't know the 2G days. Yeah, we did survive those days. Doug is also a GDE, Google Developer Expert, and he's a remarkable author and blogger. Some of you might actually recall his book, High Performance Android Apps, published by O'Reilly. And yeah, we can't wait to hear from you, Doug. And so you can go right ahead.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for having me here. Can you see my screen? Is it sharing? Oh, I don't want to share. I want to present. Is that showing up for everybody? Can you see that? Can you hear me? It's silent. So I'll just assume that you can see my screen and you can see me. I'm Doug. We're going to talk a little bit about how to make your Android app run faster. As we just mentioned, I do a lot of freelance work, helping people make their apps run faster, help make the web faster. I did write a book, High Performance Android Apps. Once the Google Slides things disappears there, that's the URL there at the bottom. So if you type that in, you can download the PDF of the book if you're interested. It's a few years old, like Android M, Marshmallow, but the tools that are in there still exist and they're still really useful. And of course, I'll be happy to take questions at the end of the talk. But if you want to reach out afterwards, I'm on Twitter. That's my email address, and you can see my website where I blog about performance a lot. So I'm going to start by talking about this picture of the Alps in Switzerland. And as you can see, there's like this walkway that's nailed to the side of an Alp. And I show this because about 4 years ago, Ericsson did a study. And in this study, they actually put sensors on people's heads to measure brain activity. And one of the questions they asked was, how do you feel when you think about standing on the edge of a cliff? And they saw people's anxiety levels go way, way up. Interestingly, they found that people's anxiety levels actually went higher when they thought about a slow mobile app. So thinking about being on the edge of a cliff stressed people out, but thinking about having to use a slow mobile app stressed them out actually even more. And this is important. If you think about it, when an app is slow, you're less likely to use it. If you're frustrated when you're using an app, you're less likely to use it. You're more likely to uninstall it. And we spend all of our time and energy working to get installs, getting more and more people to use our app. And if people try it once, they think, oh, this is cool, but I'm never going to use it again, like we've lost them. There's a lot of data about this. Google found that a 3-second delay on a mobile website causes half of your customers to bounce. Another web stat is a half-second delay increases frustration and lowers engagement. Amazon and Walmart on the desktop, like 20 years ago, found that 100 milliseconds causes them to lose revenue, 1%. And so any way you can keep revenue going or increasing your revenue is important. Losing revenue is bad, obviously. But my favorite stat is, of course, 4% of mobile users admitting to throwing their phones when they're using a slow website or app. And so it's really important that we don't have slow experiences on our in our apps. And people are demanding these rich, immersive, and fast experiences, and to get all of those working all at once can be really, really hard. To throw into that, we talked about 2G. I don't think anyone's really on 2G anymore, but 3G is really high latency. So whenever you want to establish a network connection, right? So the radio on your phone is off, you hit a button, it tries to make a radio connection. It can take between half a second and 2.5 seconds for the phone to talk to the tower, even before any packets are being sent. And latency can be really, really high on that network. It's a 200 milliseconds round trip. 4G is a little bit faster, right? The startup time is a lot faster. We still have a pretty high round trip latency. 5G, I couldn't find this number, but latency is much, much reduced. But it's going to be 5-10 years before we have a significant number of people using 5G devices. The average phone out there is 2 to 3 years old. Most people replace their phone every 3.5 years. And so even if we have 5G enabled phones, it's going to take many, many years until all the phones are upgraded where they're actually running on 5G, even if there is coverage in the area you're at. So this is a diagram from a tool I helped build when I worked at AT&T back in America. And this is actually measuring the packets coming in and out of my Android phone. And this delay at the beginning, right? So I want to start a connection. We have this long delay. Because there is this long delay, all mobile carriers have a state machine. And so they leave the radio on after the last packet is sent. And the reason for this is if the radio is still on, if another request is made, we don't have this connection establishment latency because it's already established. This, of course, can lead to battery drain, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we go further into the talk. This is what the 4G state machine looks like. This is what the 3G state machine looks like, and it's actually what the 5G state machine is going to look like. So they have a high-powered mode and like a medium-powered mode to keep the radio on for a longer period of time. Yeah. All right, so the trick with this is you could send 300 bytes of data, but the radio's on for 17 seconds. And so that's where we start talking about battery drain. So I want to talk today about some of the tools that I use to test mobile apps for performance issues and some of the best practices that I've come up with having done this for a number of years now, looking at lots of Android apps and seeing how we can fix them. And when I was at AT&T, we were helping Netflix and Facebook and all of these companies. So just about every single mobile app has performance issues. I mean, you go to Google Play to update the app and it says, what are the updates? What are the changes? We made performance improvements. Everybody's looking to make performance improvements. So I helped build this tool when I was at AT&T. It's called Video Optimizer. And it works really, really well. It's free. It's open source. I would check it out. I'm going to show some screenshots on how I've used this in the past. I actually did a lot of my work here with a tool called HTTP Canary, and it's $7, $7 US on Google Play. And it's actually really cool, and it does it all right on your phone, and you can do a lot of the analysis right on your phone, which is really, really neat. Both of them are basically running a man in the middle to capture all the traffic coming in and out of the phone. And so when I first started testing Android back in the Android, Gingerbread 2.1 days, most traffic was just HTTP, right? So the data would come out of the phone, go to the tower, and then go out to the internet and back and forth. And so if you had a man in the middle here, you could just read everything, right? Passwords, yeah, no problem. Everything was just in the clear. It was super easy. Everything now, of course, is HTTPS, and that's awesome. It should be, right? We want this all to be protected. So our man in the middle isn't super effective because HTTPS blocks that. Like, all I see is that there are packets going through, and I don't know what they are. So you can install a certificate on the phone, and then the man in the middle can read, unencrypt it because the certificate is trusted, and then it can go through. Unless the app does certificate pinning, right? We're kind of in this battle of looking at how apps work, dealing with their certificate pinning so we can get around, so we can analyze applications. If it's your own application, you can get away with this, right? You can trust a certificate of your own, and then you can see all of the traffic, and you're good to go. When I'm just testing some other random company's app, it's a good thing they're locking this down. There are still tricks, and I'm going to show you some of those tricks. HTTP Canary has this idea of an app proxy. And so they have this other app where the apps are running in the app proxy, and then the certificate gets trusted, and I can see most of the traffic. It doesn't work with login. So what I typically do is I fire up the app in the app proxy, I log in, right? That's certificate pinned, that's all locked down, high security. Then I kill the app, fire up the man in the middle, and then I can test everything else that's going on, and then capture everything that happens after login. One interesting app is Khan Academy for kids. It's all videos for kids to learn, education sort of things. I tried to log in with the man in the middle proxy up and running, and what I found really interesting is they redirected all my traffic to example.com. Normally it just fails, but in this case they black holed me to example.com, which I thought was kind of interesting because of course there's nothing at example.com. So Video Optimizer sort of works the same way. It establishes a man in the middle. You connect it to your computer. So here I am testing Samsung device. I'm using a VPN. I can attenuate the network. So one thing that this tool lets me do is change the network speed so you can test how your app runs on slower network conditions. You can then run the secure connection to decrypt HTTPS. You can record the video of what's going on the screen, and then you can run the trace and go. And so what happens is a VPN is established on the device, and that works as the man in the middle where we're capturing all of the traffic. And so here I am testing a real estate application. I'm testing it on my computer. I can see everything that's happening on my phone. When I'm done testing, I hit stop, and all the files are copied from my phone over to the computer, and I can do the analysis. HTTP Canary works very similarly, except for there's no video recording, and the VPN is all internal on the device. And the traffic appears actually in a floating window on the phone. I don't have a screenshot of that. So optimizing content delivery. So have you ever gotten a package in the mail where it's a giant box, but it's mostly bubble wrap, and then there's a tiny little thing in the corner? We really want to make sure that what we're sending over the network is optimized. Because if it's too big, if you're on a slow connection, it could take a long time for it to download. If it takes a long time to download, that makes your app seem slow, and we all know that when your app is slow, people stop using it. So Video Optimizer actually looks at all the content and tests you against 40 best practices. I'm going to focus mostly on files and images because those are the easiest things to optimize. We can make things smaller very, very easily just with simple techniques on our backend servers. So here's an example of an app that I was testing, and they made a connection off to Facebook, right? Because you can see the URL is Facebook CDN. But as I was testing the application, it made this connection for 247 kilobytes. And a couple seconds later, it made the same connection for another 247 kilobytes. So this app is accidentally making 2 calls to Facebook, right? I mean, 250K isn't a big deal, but add that up times millions and millions of users or hundreds of thousands of users, and it can actually have a pretty high latency and a pretty big effect on how it affects the application. So we want to avoid duplicate content. Like, I guess it doesn't really matter if we're hurting Facebook CDN, they can handle it. But if it's happening to content on your own app, we actually had an example when I was at AT&T of an application that said, oh, it's just a 3K image. I'm not worried, it's downloaded multiple times. And then something happened, they got a lot of traffic and their server went down. And if they had just optimized the way they were downloading that image, perhaps the server would have gone down. So this is an application about movies that are playing in movie theaters. It's called Flickster. I don't know if it's popular in South Africa. It's popular in America. And when you open up the application, it lists all the movies that are playing in the theaters. And so, for example, here's this Harrison Ford movie that came out recently, right? And what they're doing when this page loads is they're using low quality image placeholders, or LQUIP. And what this is they basically futz with the resolution of the image to make it really, really small. So this is the full size image, and it's 400 kilobytes. But the low quality placeholder is 1.5K. And so this downloads right away. You see something on the screen, so you're like, stuff is loading. And then eventually it gets sharp as the page goes on. So this first image is 1 kilobyte. And then the full-size image loads. It's 521 kilobytes. That's too big. We'll talk about that as well, right? Because if you look on the screen, it's 500 kilobytes for these little thumbnails. And that's sort of ridiculous. We can do better than that. Slowing down the page. So we can actually see how this works. This is the video of it loading. And you can see how the images are all fuzzy. And then they sharpen as the full-size images load. I'll just play it again so you can see it really quickly here. So like, here's the one I was showing you. It's all fuzzy. And then as I scroll, is downloading, there, it sharpened up the full-size image load just at the end of the video. So if we watch the main screen of Flickster, there are no low-quality images happening. It comes in full, beautiful images. If you watch really carefully, the full-size images flash. I'll play it again. So let's see one that flashes. So watch Call to the Wild. Oh, that one flashed. It sort of blinked. I'll just do it again really quickly here. So the full-size image is loaded. Oops, sorry about that. All right, so full-size image of that image right there, the woman with red hair. And if we watch, it's going to flash. See how it blinked right there? So what happened in this app is they thought they were downloading a low-quality image placeholder, but they were actually downloading the full-size image. And then because they thought it was a low-quality image placeholder, they downloaded the full-size image again. So let's just show you what happened here. This page had no low-quality image placeholders. So what was happening is they thought this was the low-quality image placeholder. And what they're doing here is they're adding parameters to lower the quality, lower the width, and lower the quality of the image. However, for those of you who know about URL parameters, it only looks through the first question mark. Putting a second question mark means that only the quality 75 was done, and it wasn't resized to width 31 and quality 1. So it ended up being 1.7 megabytes. And then, because they thought this was the low quality one, they download the 1.7 megabyte image again to replace it. So we end up with like 3.5, I guess, 3.5-ish megabytes of images for like these tiny little thumbnails on the device. And that's sort of ridiculous, right? A lot of people are on limited data usage. So this should probably be like 50K. It shouldn't be 3.5 megabytes times however many images are on this page, right? This is kind of ridiculous. And so what happened here is they should not have added this second question mark. They should have removed this bit and just said question mark width 31, quality 1. They would have gotten the low quality image. You can actually test that. There's the full size image. But if you actually look, this image at 1.7 megabytes is 2100 pixels by 2800 pixels for a thumbnail. There's a second problem with this. Once it's downloaded, the phone actually has to throw away thousands and thousands or millions of pixels to make it fit on the screen. And that takes up the CPU, which means it is draining the battery even further. So you have to download this giant file and then throw away most of the file before it shows up on the screen. I mean, this thumbnail would look great on a 4K TV, much less, you know, the Android phone I was testing on. So if we resize it, and we can actually use their resizing engine, because like Flixster has a resizing image engine, I can actually just change the width to 500 to 350, 99K, 62K. You know, you should serve the image properly for the device. So I'm going to show you some examples here really quickly using Cloudinary. Cloudinary is a, they are an image processing content management system. So this is it. Whoa, it's super zoomed in. All right, so this is a picture of me. And if you wanted to make a low quality image placeholder, with Cloudinary, you can just change parameters in the URL. And so the parameters I'm going to do here are just these. Well, actually, let's just do the vectorize first. That's kind of fun. All right, copy. And then I can vectorize this image to make it smaller. Right? So I just, by changing that, I made it a vector image. And so it's a lot smaller. It's going to be now, let me just show you. It is 62K. I can also then make the width 100, make it more of a thumbnail. Right? See how it's vectored? It sort of still looks like me. Like this would actually be kind of cool, like in sort of a postmodern way as a image placeholder. If we look at this image, it's 2 kilobytes. Like that's a reasonable image placeholder, right? You could download that and it would be super small. We can even get smaller. So Cloudinary has a bunch of performance things. We can go format auto. That will probably make it a WebP. It still says JPEG, but it's probably now a WebP. Let's see. No, it's still a JPEG. All right, and then let's do quality auto. So we're going to optimize the quality. UAUTO. Let's see what that does. It may not save us a whole lot. I mean, we're down in the 2 kilobyte regime. All right, so it went to a WebP and we're at 1.2 kilobytes. Even better, right? So just by adding a few parameters, we created this kind of cool, funky image that would make a great placeholder. Present. I always want to hit share. All right. So in this case, we've got this image that's way too big. It's not responsive, right? It's 2,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels. Like this is ginormous. It doesn't need to be that large. We could make it, you know, 350 pixels wide to be 62K. It would look awesome right here. No one would know the difference unless they looked at, you know, their data bucket and saw that they didn't kill all their data this way. But this is Spotify, right? So Spotify is a great app. I don't know if you noticed, but you know, like I have Spotify open in another tab here. I listen to Spotify all the time. This is on my mobile phone, and you can actually see that they load all these thumbnails. I was listening to some playlist, and this Gordon Lightfoot thumbnail that's right here was actually 640 pixels wide, right? This thumbnail could be 50 by 50. It would still look awesome. No one would be any wiser. It just takes up a lot less data. I talked a little bit about optimizing quality. When you're working with JPEGs, you can lower the quality of the image and it'll still look good. There are a bunch of, Google says save everything at 85%. You'll make the image half the original size, and it'll still look awesome. There's auto qualities, which will take it down to the edge of human perception. I just did an example with that with Cloudinary. A lot of tools will have that auto quality as well. It generally goes better than 85%, so you shave off even more kilobytes, and nobody's the wiser because the human eye can't perceive the difference. So here's an example. This is Amazon Prime, and I fired up Amazon Prime, and the top image here is 518 kilobytes. Like, this image would look great on my TV. It doesn't need to be on my TV. It's on my phone. If I just turn this into a JPEG and turn it into quality auto, it gets 5 times smaller. And again, nobody would even know the difference, right? Because the human eye can't perceive the difference for this image. It would still look awesome. So we should do things like this just to make sure that these landing pages load faster when we fire up the app. WebP, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, is native to Android. It's a, Google, it's one of Google's image formats. It's about 8 years old. JPEG 2000 if you're building for iOS. Safari has now announced support for WebP. I don't know if that's true for native iOS apps as well. But WebP JPEG is 26, 27 years old. WebP is 8 or 9 years old. It's a newer format, so it has better compression. So you'll save data with no loss of quality. So look at WebP for your Android apps. If I make this, so remember this is 110K. If I make it a WebP, again, you can't tell the difference in my deck here, but I shaved off another 30K, right? We're just making it faster and faster and faster, and nobody knows the difference, so we should just do that. Other things that I see. So this is Netflix, I believe. And so Anne with an E is a cool app or a cool movie. When I tested it again, I got a different image. So Netflix is always changing the images on you. They're actually serving WebPs. This is 104 kilobytes. That's awesome. So, Netflix is actually doing some of these optimizations. So potentially this will load up faster than Amazon Prime, right? And if you're competitors, if one app is faster than the other, people might use your app or the faster app, right? So make sure that your app is the faster app. There are a lot of Android devices out there. This is all of the Android devices that hit Akamai in one day. Size of the box is market share. Color is the speed of the CPU, right? There are a lot of low-end devices out here with really slow CPUs. So we really need to optimize the images so we're not resizing them and forcing that really slow CPU to work to display stuff in our application. Let's talk a little bit about GIFs. I see GIFs in apps a lot. So this is a video I took of my goat in Seattle. This is Nora. She's eating a leaf. The video was 1.4 megabytes. I took it on my phone. I turned it into a GIF, and it's 3.8 megabytes. GIFs are a really horrible format when it comes to sending them over the network. And the reason for that is because GIFs were invented like in 1989, there's no compression over time. Literally, if you have 20 frames per second, it's 20 GIFs that just play one after another. And so you can actually, if you have a GIF, you can actually tear it apart and see all of the different images. However, if I convert it into a movie, if I make it 256 colors, because remember, GIFs only had 256 colors. If I strip out the audio track, because GIFs are silent, this video is now 250K. That's 93% smaller than that animated GIF. If you actually go, I don't have that in this deck, but if you actually go and read the spec for GIF, it says, while we have an animated format, we don't recommend that anybody uses it. So the people who wrote GIF say don't use animated GIFs. So what you can do is actually put it in a video tag if you're on the web, or you can just use the video player in your Android app, and it actually works really, really well. When you look at the average web page, we've got a lot of video. So I looked at TikTok. There are a lot of people out there talking about TikTok. The President of the United States was talking about TikTok yesterday. There are a lot of people out there interested in like what kind of traffic TikTok is doing. So I fired it up and I tested it to see what kind of traffic is coming in and out of TikTok. I didn't see anything really nefarious. Maybe they're really good at hiding it. However, I didn't see anything. So when you start up TikTok, they download half of a bunch of the videos. And the reason for that is if the video is 40 seconds long, right, they've got 20 seconds there. So you can start watching the video and then they can download the rest 20 seconds as you're watching the first bit. And so it makes all the videos start up really, really fast because they downloaded a whole bunch of videos when you start up the app. The first half of the video is about 1 megabyte. So if it's downloading 20, 30, you could get a lot of downloads, a lot of data when you first start up the app. But that's sort of expected. You're going into TikTok to watch videos. So, that's one thing that's really interesting. They do have some really interesting stuff going on in that all of the views are HTML views. And they, instead of requesting them as HTML and showing them in a web view, they actually download zip files with all of the CSS, all of the JavaScript, and all of the HTML in them. And so like, here's the CDN with a 5.4 megabyte zip file, which is 25 megabytes uncompressed. Of course, I opened it up to see what was going on. We've got some PNGs. We've got some CSS and JavaScript. You can actually see this JavaScript file and this one and this one. I don't really know how they're different, but each one of them is 5.4 megabytes, which makes me think that perhaps they could have done some optimizations here, breaking up this JavaScript in smaller files and reusing it across a couple different views, just so that they don't have to download 5.4 megabytes of JavaScript for each view. That seemed a bit excessive. They had a whole section on a whole download on coronavirus. So a bunch of articles, and I guess these were all videos that had a tag of coronavirus in them. Again, it was 2.5 megabyte zip file full of all of these, I actually didn't look at the QA file. I should have looked to see what the hell was in there. I just noticed that actually. But, it's kind of an interesting way to download their content, and I'm sure there's ways that they could optimize this better. I did notice that they download a lot of fonts, and they download both the TFF and the WAF of all of these fonts. So obviously that's redundant, right? They don't need to download 2 versions of the same font over and over and over again. In this case, it was 2.5 megabytes with these fonts in it. Another app that I've been playing with is last year for Christmas, my family got me a really, really cool Lego set. And you control it over Bluetooth with your phone. And the Lego Control Plus app is how you controlled it. And this app had a problem. And the problem with this app is it was 300 megabytes. I actually had to decide what apps I was pulling off my phone to get this app onto my phone. And so it was really useful. I played with my Lego set for a little bit, but then I kept running out of space on my phone, so I actually had to remove it, and then I couldn't play with my Lego toy anymore. My kids would be like, "Dad, can we play with your crane?" I'm like, "I don't have the app anymore." So I gave them a kind of a poor review, and I'm not saying it was me, but now the font, it's half the size, right? Now it's 150 megabytes. That's still way too big for an Android app. But you can actually look, they zipped a bunch of their files, right? So here's the rally car. On the original version, the asset was 62, now it's 20. The excavator is now 15, it was 56, right? They have done a bunch of compressing these files so that the app doesn't have to be so big. So I think literally all they were doing is zipping up some of these files, making them smaller. So when they download the app, they have to uncompress it maybe when the app is running, but it doesn't take up as much space on my phone, which makes I have it on my phone now and I can play with my toy when I want to, which is kind of important. This is an app I discovered when I was working at AT&T, and they were using an analytics engine to understand how people were using their application. And even when you quit the application, somehow they managed to have this ping continue to run every 5 seconds forever. Obviously, this is a huge battery drain, right? It never allowed the cellular radio to turn off. Could you imagine a cellular company putting an app on all phones that drains the battery on every single phone that they sell? That's kind of ridiculous. Pokemon Go does the same thing. When you run Pokemon Go, the GPS is obviously on all of the time because you're using your GPS. However, they also, when I first tested it, had 5 connections to their server. And that connection was firing up every, 30 seconds or so, right? Here's the orange one, and here's the yellow one, right? So this application is running, and they kind of have all these different API calls going, but they're not synchronized. They're not connecting all of their communication with the server. Just everything's connecting kind of when it wants to. And that results in the battery never turning off, and just not a very good use of connections, right? They're using up 5 connections on the phone and 5 connections on their backend server. And there are actually documented times where Pokemon has a lot of people using the app at once and everything starts crashing. And it's because they run out of IPs on their backend server. And they run into, IP port collisions. So it's kind of like a denial of service attack being caused by the application. So if they could reduce this down into 1 connection per user, they're less likely to run in these types of issues. So we can optimize the delivery of our content by just making stuff smaller, compress the text, make your images smaller, and avoid duplicate content. So these are the tools I used. This is my book. So if you want to download that, these are the URLs. And then I used Cloudinary to do a bunch of image optimization. So with that, I would be happy to take questions. I don't think I have any more slides. I think that's it. Yep.
Okay, thanks a lot, Doug. We actually do have some questions. I'll be flagging them on the screen, starting with Errol's question.
Oh, so WebP is great, but it never quite caught on. And I think one of the reasons it never caught on is that it wasn't supported in iOS, right? It wasn't supported by Safari, and it wasn't supported on the iPhone. And now it is. So hopefully it will catch on. So the AV1 image format. So AV1 is a new video format, and the AV1 image format is essentially a 1-frame video, and it is supported, I believe, in Chrome and Firefox. AV1 is going to be supported by all browsers. Hopefully that format will be supported by all browsers. These things take time. So I hope that image format will be supported across many, many browsers. Right now, I think this is WebP's like 1 year of glory. So this is your chance to use WebP.
Okay, thank you for that. Errol, if you have more questions, you can just use the chat section. Next up, we have a comment from Martin. That's the comment there on the screen.
Oh, Android 11 supports I don't know if you say that, or HEIF files as an alternative to GIFs. You can also use animated WebPs. There are a lot of ways around it. However, videos are always going to be smaller than animated image formats. So if you can switch it over to MP4, you'll always save data. Oh, here's an app that sometimes lags because of GIFs. Yeah, if you ever actually look at Twitter, and it's easier in the browser, obviously, but whenever it says that there's a GIF, they're actually movies, right? So and actually if you go to Giphy, they're actually always showing you them as movies because they're so much smaller and so much faster. You can download them as a .gif file, but in general, everybody uses them as movies. Could they use app bundles in Lego app? I think that'd be really smart because honestly, like if you look here, I think you can see this, right? Well, it looks like they are using bundles, but they're still downloading the rally car and the 4x4, and I don't have those models. I only have the excavator model, so it might be smarter if they downloaded those like when you wanted, right? You could download the one that you wanted inside the app, right? I don't need the rally car on my phone taking up 20 megabytes. That's probably like 7 or 8 pictures that I could take instead of having that on my phone.
Okay, the last is just a comment, nice tools. And with that, I'd like to thank you once again, Doug. That was very informative. Thanks for all the resources and examples there. And I guess this brings us to the end of the presentation sessions. We will just go into a question and answer session. I am going to just add the rest of the speakers onto the stream so that if there's a question, they could, you guys can quickly help us with feedback. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask now.
For those of you who are looking at my screen, you may have seen that I'm at 5% battery. I'm going to go get a charger. I'll be right back.
Okay. Just scrolling as well on the chat section to look for questions. If I've skipped any, and you can see that your question hasn't been answered, we do have lots of comments, feedback. So feel free to just re-type your question or just copy paste it so we can have a look at it. Okay, Potsane, there's one for you on the screen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we actually can. Like, remember that I said the callback object methods. What you actually do that is just basically logging. There's nothing weird being done. So I guess if you can log it, then you can ship it to your analytics service, Firebase or whatever you use. So yeah, you can actually access them in Pod as well. Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot, Potsane. We're just going to give a few more minutes for any more questions. In the meantime, we'll just showcase some of the feedback from the participants. A lot of thank you messages there. People found this really informative and really beneficial. So thank you very much.
I saw that there was quite an interesting comment from one of our audience members around joining the Kotlin Land Slack channel, because there you get to actually chat to the engineering team behind Kotlin Compose.
Okay. There's a question. Oh, okay. That's the comment there from class. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so there's a question there from Stephen. I'm not sure if any of you would like to take that up. It says, I read that apps built using web views aren't as safe as native apps because they are prone to cross-site scripting. Is this true? maybe that's a security privacy. But of course, any of you, just feel free to answer that.
I don't know, like, so web views are using Chrome, and so like I think all web pages there, I guess there's the possibility that there's cross-site scripting, but there's a lot of ways you can prevent that from happening. There are headers you can add, there are security headers you can add to prevent that from happening in your web views. I think as long as you're smart about it, you should be fine.
Okay, thanks a lot, Doug. I don't see any more questions here. We do have a comment from one of our, this is GDG Cape Town. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us. They loved your presentations. So I guess we don't really have any more questions here, and we are going to just round off the session, and I'm just gonna remove you guys from the live session. Thank you once again. We really enjoyed all the presentations. Okay, so moving to the last section of our event today, we just want to thank our sponsors, Google and DVT. DVT has sponsored us with some vouchers for our speakers. So thank you very much, DVT. So to all our speakers, we'll be reaching out to you and issuing the vouchers to you. And we also would like to thank the GDG Pretoria organizing team. As you would know, GDG organizers are just there to facilitate for all the events that happen. So we don't have a clear-cut direction of exactly what the direction is led by you, the community, and you, the members. And so at any point, feel free. This is the team that has been working on the event and all other events. So we're really happy and really thankful to you, Constance, KG, Tash, and Obakang for the work you've put in to make this event a success. And lastly, we would like to encourage you to give us more feedback. We are just it's a rejuvenated chapter. So everything about us is new. We are here to serve you, and we also want to interact with you more as members of the GDG Pretoria chapter. So feel free to send us feedback, communicate with us. And our email address is gdgpretoriasa@gmail.com, if for those who would like to send us an email. And now we're just going to move over to the 5-minute break. And during this 5-minute break, we are accepting feedback. So there's a feedback form that you'll find in the chat section. Would like to hear more from you. Give us some feedback. And from there, we're going to draw one lucky winner. So see you in 5 minutes then. All right, guys, thanks for your feedback. We're just gonna input the names in a raffle system. We're gonna use random.org, and we will be announcing the winner shortly. So just an additional 2 minutes, please. Thank you. All right, there we go. Don't know if you can see the screen. We're going to be picking out a winner just now.
All right. We have received these names that you can see on the screen. I'm just going to scroll through them so you can see. And we're going to randomize, and whoever comes out at the top is our winner for today. All right. Looks like Bafana takes this one. Well done, Bafana. Congratulations. We will be in touch with you about your prize. I'm going to hand back over to Nomsa.
Thank you very much, Tash. And thank you once again. We can't say thank you enough to our speakers. That was a very fantastic session. Thank you once again to our sponsors, and a special thank you to you for attending this session. And so that's it from us. For those of you who would like to present in future, remember, we don't choose. You might be a novice, you could be an expert, and we like the balance. So feel free to reach out to us, and we'll give you a chance to speak. We will be sharing some of those details on how to fill in our speaker request form pretty shortly on the chat section. And well done to Bafana. Congratulations. Thank you for everyone who gave us feedback. We value your feedback. So the fact that it's just one winner is only because we cannot sponsor everyone at this moment. But yeah, that's it from us. Stay safe, and remember to just keep a smile on your face. If there are still any questions, you could just write them, and we'll look for an answer for you from the relevant people. Thank you. Good night.